That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Wham, which I believe is the 8th documentary from filmmaker Chris Smith, which is being released theatrically in the UK on June 27th, 2023, and will be available to stream on Netflix July 5th, 2023.
Do you know any of Chris's other work?
Yeah. On the positive side, I quite enjoyed Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond, which is about Jim Carrey playing Andy Kaufman for the 1999 film Man in the Moon, directed by Milos Forman. He also directed Fyre, The Greatest Party That Never Happened, which I have not seen. He produced, famously, Tiger King. We reviewed a previous series of his called Bad Vegan, which you might remember. He also directed a portrait about Robert Downey Sr. called Senior last year, so he works very frequently.
This one, through archival interviews and footage, George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley relived the arc of their Wham career from 70s best buds to 80s pop icons. I thought this was very good.
I thought it bummed me out. It made me sad looking back on this music group for many reasons, but I was moved.
It does something interesting by, like, it stays strictly to Wham. Mm-hmm. So the documentary ends with their sort of farewell concert. Mm-hmm. So we don't really get into then George Michael's sort of rise to superstardom as a solo artist. So I thought that was really interesting. I am familiar with Wham, but I'm not a super fan, so I did learn things. I'd be curious to know how interesting the subject matter would be or the documentary would be to someone who's not familiar with Wham. But I thought it was well put together.
It was very well edited by Gregor Lyon. It's my understanding that, because it's being narrated by George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley, and of course George Michael sadly passed away in 2016. So it's my understanding that a lot of this is untapped archival interview footage. But it feels very, you'd have no idea.
No, it's very
seamless.
Well, and in-depth. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it works very well, and I think the collection of footage and all the assets that they have available to them, combined with the narration of or from the two people themselves, works really well.
And it's kind of organized because Andrew's mother scrapbooked Wham's, like every little bits and everything that was published about Wham, she put in a chronological scrapbook.
Yeah, she has dozens of scrapbooks.
So I thought that was an interesting way to kind of move through the timeline.
Things I learned: they met at the age of 12 in 1975 and became fast friends. They started off with a band called The Executive, where they played ska music, and that did not go anywhere because there, I believe, were 5 members, and it was so tragic that the other 3 just like left them.
They stopped showing up, yeah.
So they knew George and Andrew that they were just going to be a pair, a duo. So George is Greek, and George Michael is not his real name. He has a very Greek-sounding name that I wouldn't be able to pronounce. But Andrew, his nickname for George was Yog, which I thought was really sweet.
It's cute because he's referred to that as Yog throughout.
I mean, probably the best part of the documentary to me, just it is sad, but it made me happy knowing that these two people really seemed to like love and respect each other, and they really were friends. Their dynamics seemed very genuine, so it was a pleasure to witness that.
Well, it's also a pleasure to rewatch kind of the glory of George Michael.
Such a talented songwriter and producer
and performer.
And I remember all of those songs.
It's funny because Wham, towards the end of their tenure, like 85 and 86, when George started stepping out solo vocally, you know, in my mind's eye, like things like Last Christmas or Freedom, to me those aren't Wham songs when they actually are, because I'm not thinking of Wham when I'm listening to them.
Well, not the Freedom 90 that we know from George Michael, the original Freedom. But like Careless Whisper is in the U.S. a Wham song. even though it's just George Michael. Yeah, so I mean, it was interesting to revisit that. They do have a song called Wham Rap, and those lyrics are so corny.
They are, but I like that song.
But it's cute, and it's also the two guys are so cute. So we know George Michael is homosexual, and his musical partner Andrew is not. But just their relationship just feels so sweet and honest, and it's cute watching Andrew sort of take a back seat to George's talent. Like he was just happy to be with his friend and be along for this amazing ride, and they left with some dignity and grace. Like we hear Andrew talking about how he doesn't want to, and George acknowledging that he's sure his friend does not want to continue to be sort of the butt of a joke. Like, oh, he's just coasting with this superstar. So I feel like they really the sense I got from the documentary is they respected one another. Some other interesting facts are that they released they got a shitty record deal like everyone does. They released 2 singles that aren't a hit, and they're told like, this is kind of it for you. But then on a fluke or very randomly, they get a call to be a replacement act for a larger band that had to cancel last minute for the show Top of the Pops. So they get to go on, and that's kind of what reinvigorated their careers.
Well, it's also a reminder, especially in the music industry now, how difficult it is. There were things where everybody tuned into, and that is what made you.
Yeah, so it was decided sort of at a point in their career that Michael would do all of the writing and producing. Like Andrew agreed that probably was best for them if they wanted to take their music to the next level. And then we kind of get the sense that it is made very clear, though, that Andrew was very much the leader in their relationship, and he was the more confident one. He had the style, and it was through Andrew that George Michael was made.
He was crafted in the shadow.
Yeah. Of course, we hear about how when they were like, when they first became big stars, they had no money. And that's when they decided to get new management.
Yeah, Simon Napier Bell.
Something I didn't know is Careless Whisper was originally recorded with
Jerry Wexler, who's known for like Aretha Franklin and Ray Charles,
among many other people. But that George and Andrew did not like his mix. And that's when George realized that he needs to just
produce his own,
do his own. So I thought that was really interesting. But we also find out that that's not the first song that he produced. The first one he produced was Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. And the story behind that song is that Andrew left George a note, like in the morning, saying Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. But it was kind of like a typo. Or no, he wrote Wake Me Up Before You Go. And George thought, oh, that'd be a good song title. And then he switched it up a little bit. I thought that was cute.
Isn't that the song? Is that the song that's playing in Zoolander when they're spraying gasoline in each other's mouths?
When all the model guys are driving in the Jeep, yeah. I believe so. Then we see how they were the first like sort of Western pop group to perform in China.
And communist China, yeah.
And that really sort of elevated their career. And then what solidified George Michael as a solo artist is their participation in Live Aid, where he sang like Don't Let the Sun Fall Down on Me but with Elton John. That was pretty powerful. And then the final part of the documentary is their final performance at Wembley Stadium, which I agree. I mean, it's sad, but kind of in a happy way.
Yes, it feels like it feels like the prologue we need for a far-ranging documentary on George Michael.
There is a lot of conversation about George Michael's sexuality because he came out to everyone. Everyone is in Andrew. They also had 2 sort of like female
members of the band.
Kind of. Wham was only considered the 2 gentlemen, but these 2 women, one of whom was replaced halfway through, were a big part of their like live performances. So they all knew George was gay, but he made a decision early on that if he wanted to be a big star, he'd have to keep it a secret. So we hear in his own words how he felt like he put himself in a corner and regretted it.
Yeah, but no one was coming out then.
But he said something that had never occurred to me. So it's kind of profound that he said that, because a lot of times I know, I mean, we've all done it. I mean, I've sort of made fun of people like George Michael, Ricky Martin, Elton John. Like, how do people not? Like, who do you think you're fooling, girl? But he says something that made me change my mind about that, because he said that, and I also relate to this, not that I'm desirable in that way, but like, oh, I don't ever think a woman would be attracted to me. So I don't ever think, like, I don't ever feel the need to say it. And he says that in a way that really clicked with me, that he wasn't trying to be deceptive. He just didn't see himself in that way. So he didn't realize it until it was too late that all of these women are going to find him to be a sex symbol. But by that point, it's too late.
But, you know, when we get audio of him talking about his inspiration for some songs, and it was, you know, men, or a man in one particular case. You know, when you listen to Ricky Martin, a lot of his lyrics, those are directly addressed to the opposite gender.
Sure, but I mean, even still, it's like these people are artists who want to create or want to be famous. They want to be on stage. Your primary thought is that, not like, oh, I'm going to trick people. And, you know, maybe nowadays people are more aware of that because there's more acceptance, so they're less inclined to pretend for as long.
We don't have to play this game, or, you know, because there's footage of Elton John praising George Michael as the best songwriter to come out of England in, what, decades? And, you know, Elton John had to go through that stage of first saying he's bisexual, and then ultimately saying that he's gay. You know, it's just what we forced people to go through to acclimate to the culture.
But I would recommend this, especially if you're, you know, even a moderate fan of George Michael or Wham.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did enjoy it.
What would you give it?
3.
I would give it 3.5 out of 5. Anything else?
No.
Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.